Imagine for a moment that the sun has already set and you are completely lost in an enormous 20-acre cornfield maze. The twists and the turns that started out as fun now have you feeling, well, let's just say a bit anxious. Every path you take seems to either lead you in circles or towards dead ends. You don't know which way to go to find your way back out. So, what are you going to do next? If you're like the now famous Massachusetts couple from 2011, you're going to call 911.
We thought this would be fun. Instead, it's a nightmare. I'm really scared. It's really dark, and we got a 3-week-old baby with us.
Relax, calm down. Your husband's with you, right?
Yes, but my baby.
The operator responds, I understand, and a police officer is on the way to help. As you probably already know, the story has a happy ending. It didn't take long for police to find the family and escort them out of the maze to safety because, as it turns out, they were just 25 feet away from the exit. Now, this is where I need to take you on a little brief historical detour, but trust me, it's going to be worth it. Let's go back some 4,000 years or so. In scattered places far away from one another, ancients carved pictures into rocks and cave walls, and they even sometimes paint those same pictures in various places. Pictures of what? Well, they were what you might call a maze, but what many historians and enthusiasts are now referring to as labyrinths. What's the difference, you might ask? Well, even though they're often used interchangeably, it's considered that to qualify as a maze, a design must have choices in the pathway. Do I go left or right? Dead end. Now I have to go back. This is what's often referred to as a multi-cursal path. No, that doesn't mean that you let fly multiple curses as you hit those dead ends. Multi-cursal simply means that there's more than one possible route between the center and the outside. Corn mazes, as well as the traditional hedge mazes in public parks and private gardens around the world, those are typically multi-cursal, and they exist solely for the purpose of messing with your head. On the other hand, labyrinths have one pathway that leads from the entrance to the goal, even though that path can be full of all kinds of twists and turns that often make you feel like you're advancing and retreating all at the same time. These are called unicursal designs, and they've been around the longest by far. So, a labyrinth, such as those found in 4,000-year-old cave and rock carvings, are by design created with just one path. There are many different kinds of labyrinth designs, but the oldest, the most prolific designs are called classical patterns, and they do in fact predate every known reference to mazes. In fact, many historians suspect that mazes came about by taking classical labyrinth designs and then just adding dead ends and choices into them. So now I have a question for you. Is life more of a maze or a labyrinth? The truth is, life can often feel very much like a maze. It feels like each day is filled with difficult choices left or right, in which the consequences of those choices seem complex beyond comprehension. Will this help or hurt? Will it cause me to win or lose? Will I sink or swim? And some choices, once we've fully committed ourselves to them, seem in retrospect like these tremendous dead ends. A pointless job, a lifeless relationship, a hopeless situation. I get it. Not only have I personally been there, but I think most everyone else has as well. But I made a very interesting discovery years ago that really and truly changed my perspective. I was working for a publishing company, and I was the guy in charge of developing curriculum, resources, and events for youth pastors. I had an idea inspired by a book I had read in college and subsequently reread multiple times called The Making of a Leader by Dr. J. Robert Clinton. Now, keep in mind that this was in the 90s. Social media didn't exist. Blogs had not even really found their footing yet, certainly nothing like the way we think of them today. Anyway, I thought, what if I found the top, most respected youth pastors around the world, and I interviewed them in depth in order to write their stories and see if I could identify the thread that ran through their lives from their earliest memories to present day. It was an email newsletter, and I called it Profiles, and I pitched the idea to roughly 200 people that I had on a mailing list. It took off like a rocket. Within a year, I had more than 5 1,000 subscribers. I had clearly struck a nerve, and it was because of this simple idea. God is at work in your life. Nothing is wasted, and it all adds up. In other words, life isn't a maze designed just to mess with your head. It's more like a labyrinth. In a labyrinth, there are times when it feels like you're just feet away from your goal, but as you keep walking, you find yourself drifting further and further away. And there are times when it looks like your goal is dead ahead, and then suddenly your path takes a sharp turn in what obviously must be the wrong direction. But it's just an illusion. If you could take a drone up high enough to see the entire labyrinth, you'd see that every step is still taking you closer to your goal as long as you refuse to quit and you keep moving forward. Okay, so picture this. It's the 1950s. There's a scientist in a lab. He has buckets filled with water and a cage full of rats. The goal of this mad scientist is to see how long the rats can swim before they drown. And no, this isn't a heartless scene from a Science Gone Wrong movie. This was a real lab experiment conducted by Kurt Richter, a well-known Harvard graduate and scientist with the Johns Hopkins University. And his experiments led to a truly amazing discovery. You see, rats are notoriously good swimmers. And in Richter's experiments, the rats lasted about 15 minutes before giving up and then sinking into a watery grave. But in a follow-up experiment, just as the rats started to give up and sink, Richter pulled them out to safety, dried them off, and gave them a brief period of rest, only to then put them right back into that same bucket. Now why? Why would he do that? Well, now this mad scientist wanted to know how long they would last the second time around. Would they last 10 minutes? 5 minutes? Less? Nope. Those little rodents taught Richter a massive lesson. They swam, get this, an average of 60 hours. That's 6 with a 0, or 2.5 days before giving up the second time. Richter's conclusion was that saving the rat from drowning, even temporarily, gave that rat a superpower that we call hope. In this way, he wrote, the rats quickly learned that the situation is not actually hopeless. After being saved from drowning, it turns out they recovered almost immediately and learned just as quickly that they were not, in fact, doomed to die, that the situation was not lost, that there might be a helping hand at the ready. In short, when they had a reason to keep swimming, they did. They didn't give up and they didn't go under. After elimination of hopelessness, wrote Richter, the rats do not die. And here's what I want you to take away from this episode. Life can be complicated and confusing at times. It can seem like there are too many choices with implications that are beyond figuring out. It can sometimes feel like we've hit a wall, a dead end, and all of our efforts have been a waste. I'm here to tell you, that's the wrong way to think. Instead of looking at life like an enormous corn maze designed to mess with your head, learn to see it more like a labyrinth. Change your mind and train yourself to see that no matter what twists and turns your life takes, you will stay calm, keep your eyes forward, fixed on the prize, and keep marching onward. Remind yourself that you aren't lost and that your situation may be hard, but it is most definitely not impossible or hopeless. The things you're learning and experiencing in this moment are like precious resources that will prove invaluable at some point down the road. Nothing has to be wasted. Everything matters. Remember, a better mind always leads to a better life.